My name is Chase Thomas. I am the Senior Policy Advisor with Better Utah Institute. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today for our legislative wrap-up webinar. We are very grateful that, well, for all of you who joined us for our pre-legislative session webinar, we brought the gang back together. And we're grateful for Equality Utah, Stewardship Utah, and the Utah Education Association for joining us. As I said, we're with the Better Utah Institute. We are a nonprofit organization that is committed to educating Utahns on issues of public concern and increasing civic engagement. We work on a broad range of issues from public transit to good governance and everything in between. And we really rely on working with our partners who are in the trenches on specific issues to help us out and help us organize great educational events like this. So to get started, I'd like to go to our panelists and have them introduce themselves. If you could introduce yourself, your role, and a little bit about your organization, that'd be great. And let's get started with Nat.
Thanks, Chase. Hi, my name is Nat Williams. I'm the Democracy Policy Associate at Stewardship Utah. Stewardship Utah is a relatively new organization. It resulted from the merger between the Rural Utah Project and O2 Utah last year. And we work to protect the land, air, and water for all people in Utah through democracy, policy, and elections. And I'm that democracy piece. So great to be here. Thanks so much.
Piper.
Hi, everyone. My name is Piper. I am the Climate and Air Quality Policy Associate at Stewardship Utah. Nat gave a great summary of what our organization does. But yeah, this session I focused on air quality and energy bills.
Great. Thank you both for joining us. Bonnie?
I'm Bonnie Billings. I'm the Campaigns and Elections Director at the Utah Education Association. The Utah Education Association is also a member of the coalition Protect Utah Workers, and that coalition is running the House Bill 267 referendum.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Marina?
Hi, I'm Marina Lowe. I'm the Policy Director at Equality Utah. Equality Utah is an organization here in the state that focuses on the rights of the LGBTQ community.
Great. Thank you all for joining us. To start off with a quick question, what's one word or phrase that you would use to describe the recently completed legislative session? Let's go reverse order. So start with Marina.
Power grab. And hard.
Yes. Bonnie?
For us, I would say unrelenting.
Piper?
I think for us, maybe it's not over till it's over. A lot of thinking things were good to go and then change is happening.
Nat?
It was a doozy, that's for sure.
I would say tiring. Very glad that I got to rest after the legislative session was over. Very much needed. So we're going to go through each of your organizations, and I'd like to hear what were some of the good bills that you were watching during the session, what were some of the bad bills that might have come up, and ultimately, what did they do and what happened to them? Let's start with Piper this time.
Just unmuting myself. Thank you so much, Chase. So my role at Stewardship Utah was primarily focused on passing 4 or 5 different bills, focusing on those ones specifically. So we focused more on offense on air quality and climate issues than defense. So that's kind of what I want to highlight It was a really exciting session for us. So first I want to talk about one of our biggest successes. We passed HB 420 halogen emission amendments. So what this bill does is there was a report that was released by the Division of Air Quality in November that found that US Magnesium, their plant on the shores of the Great Salt Lake, are responsible for about 97% of a certain class of pollutants called halogens. And their report issued recommendations of what the state can do to reduce those emissions, finding that a simple technology would reduce them by up to 75%. So this was really our primary goal this session, was to work on passing this bill that granted the DAQ the authority to implement some new technologies at US Magnesium. The plant is not currently operating, but the idea is once they resume operations, or if someone else buys the plant, we need to have better pollution controls in place. So I think my favorite retelling of this bill was from the CityCast Salt Lake podcast. They called this the zombie bill because there were many efforts to kill it from numerous lobbyists. But we, I think, did a really outstanding job with our partners and to get this bill passed and fully funded. So we're really proud of the work that happened there, and we're really grateful for the Division of Air Quality for their partnership on that bill. Two bills that we worked on that did not pass but got painfully close was SB 124 landscaping procurement amendments and SB 222, which addressed emissions evasion. So just a little bit of quick detail about these two. Both were sponsored by Senator Stephanie Pitcher. And the landscaping procurement amendments bill focused on transitioning state lawn equipment to electric forms. This is because we know that landscaping equipment, the volatile organic compound emissions from this type of equipment on the Wasatch Front is actually greater than all industrial activity. So oddly enough, these little engines are really bad for our air. We were really proud of how far this bill got. If anyone happened to be watching Floor Time at 11:59 p.m. on Friday, this was the last bill to be heard of the legislative session. It was brought up for a vote at 11:55 and then circled because leadership wanted to push other bills through, and then brought back up for a vote at 11:59, and ultimately we ran out of time. We're confident, though, that we had the votes to pass it, and so we're really excited to bring this bill back next year. And then additionally, SB 222 focused on addressing people who register their vehicles outside of the non-attainment areas or counties that have emissions testing rules in order to evade getting their vehicles tested. What we know is that there's over 4,000 vehicles on the Wasatch Front that are doing this, and they often emit a far greater amount of pollutants than those who are following the rules. So this just gave the Division of Motor Vehicles a little more teeth to be able to identify who's evading those testing and making sure people comply. Yet again, this bill made it quite far. It got all the way to the House, out of the Senate and onto the House floor for a vote, but ultimately did not receive funding, which was why this one died. Again, though, we were really pleased with how far this bill got, and we're excited to bring it back next session. And then the last one that I want to highlight that we worked on was HB 525 Clean Truck Amendments. This is a bill I'm really proud of. It actually did not end up getting a hearing, but a lot of great work went into it. What we found was that a certain class of vehicles, heavy-duty vehicles that were built before 2010, really emit the lion's share of our vehicle emissions on the Wasatch Front. In fact, we found that if you were to get rid of those vehicles, it would reduce our total nitrogen oxide pollution on the Wasatch Front by 10%. That might not sound like much, but that is a huge win if we were to go after one category of emitters. What was amazing is we got 15 Republican co-sponsors on this bill and a lot of really great conversations around this issue. And so we're really excited to bring this one back next session. So in summary, I think I'm pleased with the work that we did. Unfortunately, I'm seeing I'm out of time to get to bad bills, but would be happy to share resources about other legislation as well.
Thank you so much, Piper. And thank you for the proactive work you're doing to help clean our air. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Marina, can we go next to you?
Yes, of course. Okay, so I was looking over my list and, typically I would start with the biggest, most headline grabbing bills. But those are the negative ones, and I want to start on a positive note instead. So I'm going to focus on the wins that we were able to achieve this year. It was a really tough environment, and I will just say over the past several years, particularly when it comes to legislation focused on the transgender community, it's been very hard to make a lot of progress up at the Utah legislature, and so that's been a really difficult area, and that that applies to this year as well. So we'll get into that in just a bit. But first, I do want to share that we had some wins. Sometimes our wins look like bills that we're able to pass affirmatively. That was not so much the case this year. Sometimes the wins are just in the bills that we're able to stop. And I want to highlight 5 of those bills that we were able to halt, which I think is really great. The first is HB 250. This was a bill that would have prevented employers from taking any disciplinary action against employees, including school officials, for misgendering or using the wrong name for a student or another employee. We had seen this bill in previous legislative sessions and really felt that it was unnecessary, just another legislative attempt to go after the transgender community or those who use different pronouns. And so we're really grateful to be able to stop this bill in a Senate committee. It died and did not advance, so that's definitely a win. HB 401, this was another repeat bill. Piper talked about zombie bills. We often see a lot of zombie bills in the Utah legislature in a given session, but another trend is to see the same bill come up year after year after year. And that is true with HB 401, which was a bill going after drag performances. Representative Colin Jack from the St. George area seems bound and determined to introduce legislation every year because of an incident that arose in St. George. He just can't get over it, and so continues to introduce legislation. And so we worked really hard actually with leadership, House leadership, and also with the chairs of the committee to which this bill was assigned to make sure that it was never put on an agenda. So it never got a hearing, never moved at all. And so that's another win. HB 521, this is a really harmful piece of legislation that was introduced by I believe Representative Nicolene Peck. It would have banned any public funding for gender affirming care. And would have had some real significant consequences, I think, for our transgender community. I want to just flag also, this is the first time that we would have seen legislation going after adults and their ability to get gender affirming healthcare. We've seen a lot of conversation in the state and in our country generally about concern about minors accessing care for gender affirming either procedures or medication. This is the first time we would have seen legislation going after adults and the choices that they make in terms of seeking healthcare. It would have, I think, had consequences for individuals who are on Medicaid, would have certainly had consequences for transgender inmates in our prison and jail system. And I think also would have had consequences for the gender clinic that's housed at the University of Utah. Again, our strategy on this bill was going directly to leadership to appeal to them to hold the bill. We also worked with various other governmental stakeholders, including folks within the governor's office. And we're able to hold this bill at bay using a lot of legal arguments about litigation that's currently sort of ongoing across the country. But I will just flag for all of you, I think this is most definitely going to come back next session, and it will be much harder to hold it back next session. So keep your eye on that one. Just 2 more that I'll run through really quickly on wins. SB 320, this was a bill introduced by Senator Vickers in the Senate, and it would have granted what we call a conscience clause to doctors to refuse treatment of patients essentially for any reason. This was really broad language in this bill. It would have covered religious reasons, but also just moral and personal or even medical reasons. And so, along with a lot of other folks who had grave concerns about this bill, we were able to approach the sponsor, and he decided to pull it from an agenda. So that's great. There would have been, I think, meaningful consequences for the LGBTQ community in terms of doctors being able to refuse care on those grounds. But I think the implications were really far-reaching, and could have allowed for a lot of Utahns to be refused care for a variety of different reasons. And then finally, HB 487, this was another Nicolene Peck bill. It would have created a Women's Veterans Day, which sounds great to recognize female service members, but it would have specifically excluded from that recognition transgender service members, either those who are currently serving or those who have previously served. And so we were able to get that bill held as well. Finally, I just would be remiss if I didn't mention the two bills that did pass. HB 269, this was the bill going after transgender students and their ability to live in dorms on Utah's campuses, and now puts in place some segregation measures, essentially restricting the ability of students to live in dorms on campus based on their gender at birth. And then also HB 77, of course, the flag bill that bans the display of flags in Utah classrooms, but also on Utah government properties. This was a really thorny and challenging bill. We had great hopes that we were able to get that we would be able to get additional amendments on this bill. We were able to amend it in the House in ways that were really meaningful and important to make sure that both students and teachers are able to exercise their rights when it comes to wearing flags as stickers, pins, etc. But unfortunately, we're not able to get the language out about government displays, which I think is really problematic. And so we'll see what happens with that bill moving forward.
Thank you, Marina. And thank you so much for focusing on all those wins that you had. You all really are a formidable team up on Capitol Hill, and we're thankful for all your work.
Thanks, Chase.
Nat, can you go next? I know there's a lot in the democracy space this year, from vote by mail to judiciary. What were you focusing on?
Yeah, thanks, Chase. There, as you said, were a lot of bills filed related to our election system, to the independence of our judiciary, to the right to have citizen-led ballot initiatives. I was tracking over 50 myself, and very few of them, just a handful, were good. And those ones really we never saw as having a chance of making it very far in the process. Some of them didn't even make it out of rules. So unfortunately, I will be focusing mostly on bad bills, but there, as Marina said, are still some bright spots within that. Bills that we were able to water down or stop completely. I first want to talk about HB 300 because I think this is a bill that most people heard about in the democracy space this legislative session. HB 300 passed and has significantly changed our vote by mail system in Utah. Something to note is that the bill, as it was originally introduced, would have ended vote by mail as we know it, essentially. And you know, we, along with our partners, thousands of Utahns, all worked extremely hard to let legislators know exactly what kind of impact this would have and to just voice support for our current system, a system that an overwhelming majority of Utahns use, trust, understand, and appreciate having. So we were able to water down this bill and sort of delay the worst impacts until after 2029. But what this bill will do is it will, after 2029, require Utahns to actually request their mail-in ballot. And it implements some increased voter ID requirements, both when registering and you'll see later this year, as well as after 2029, a spot to put the last four of a state ID, you know, your driver's license, on the mail-in ballot directly. And lastly, it will require that your mail-in ballot be received by the clerks by the end of election day. Right now, so long as your ballot is postmarked the day before election day, it can still arrive after and be counted as a timely cast ballot. So, this bill will absolutely negatively impact rural voters who, their mail has a longer distance and time to travel, disabled voters, elderly voters, working families, honestly. But we're pleased with the provisions we were able to get with this bill, and also we have confidence that in the next 4 years we will have other legislative sessions to sort of come back and take another crack at it. I'm happy to answer questions about that, but I'll briefly mention there were many bills related to the judiciary that were filed. We can clearly see that they were in retaliation to some rulings from last year that really displeased the legislature. And again, thanks to, a lot of work from great organizations, from the Utah State Bar and from, voters, a lot of them were able to be killed and didn't end up making it all the way through the process. One bill that we're concerned about is SB 296, which right now our Chief Justice of our Utah Supreme Court is chosen by the other members of the Supreme Court, but this will give that power actually to the governor, and with the advice and consent of the Senate. So you may be thinking that's the federal model, what's so wrong with that? But it keeps the 4-year terms from our previous model. So that means that our, Chief Justice of our Utah Supreme Court will have to come in front of our governor and our Senate every 4 years to sort of explain themselves. So that's something that we are concerned about. We were able to stop some bad election bills. One bill that was going to eliminate our election day voter registration, we were able to get that main provision out before it even made it, had its committee hearing. There was a bill that would have created a legislative commission that would have directly recommended whether or not judges should be retained on our ballots. That bill did not make it through the process. One other bill that I'll mention really briefly is SB 73, which passed, and that has put some really onerous requirements on people filing citizen-led ballot initiatives. And again, there was a provision in there that sort of has been delayed, that constitutional public notice requirement that's estimated to cost filers $1.4 million to publish the full text of their initiative in newspapers for the 60 days preceding the election. So definitely some hard things this session, but we were able to water down some bills and stop some other bills, which we're proud of that work. So thanks.
Thank you, Nat. And thank you also. I wanted to point out your work with the Let Utah Vote Coalition and everything you all did with that coalition on not only HB 300, but all the vote by mail bills and democracy related bills in general. So thank you. Bonnie, so we would normally have the Utah Education Association on to talk through a slew of education related bills, but I know you were particularly focused on one bill. Where was your focus at this session?
Well, it was focused on, I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but House Bill 267. It is the public sector labor union amendment. So it's the bill that is prohibiting collective bargaining for public sector workers. So your first responders, teachers, any kind of support staff, and other public service workers. It's particularly concerning because we know that these are employees that need a voice in their profession to help provide safety, to help provide pay and benefits, without being able to have a strong union or to be able to have somebody that can have those negotiations. You're looking at the inability for the state and for the city to attract and retain good employees. So there's a lot of repercussions to this bill. And it was, unfortunate to see how fast it moved through the legislative session. It was introduced and signed within 2 weeks. And this was despite overwhelming opposition. We were hearing from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle that they'd never seen a response like this before. And it still passed. And it was really unfortunate. I know there had been some news and some information about a potential compromise bill, and that didn't end up happening. And so now we are running a referendum on the House Bill 267. And when I say we, I want to make sure it's Protect Utah Workers. It's a coalition of public sector unions, as well as now private unions are definitely getting involved and supporting this effort as well, because they know how important it is to make sure that we have public workers who have a voice in their employment and have a voice at the table, a seat at the table. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I hope that everybody on this call has heard about this referendum. I hope that it's making the rounds, but wanted to make sure that if you haven't heard of it, please go to protectutahworkers.com. And there you can find opportunities to sign, opportunities to pick up packets to go get signatures from your friends and family, and opportunities to donate. And it's just been, we've had an overwhelming response to this, to our launch. We launched on Saturday. We've had 1,500 people sign up to volunteer and get signatures. And it's been a really, really amazing launch that we're looking at. So we definitely need everybody's help, though. I mean, this is not an easy process. This is one of the hardest referendum processes in the country, and it hasn't been attempted yet. And so we are definitely fighting an uphill battle, but we know that it is important for the voters of Utah to have this say, to pass bills that have that amount of overwhelming opposition and to be ignored. We absolutely need to put this issue to the voters. One of the things that I say is, if you sign this referendum, it puts it to the vote of the people. And so the people can actually be heard in this issue. And, we have a lot of support. I think momentum's on our side, but we need everybody to help with this effort. 10 signatures, 15 signatures that you can get from your friends and family. If you're going to a party, come grab a packet from us. Go get those signed. We have a training on our website that you can take, and you can get that done. And staging locations all over the state, from Logan to St. George. In Price, we just opened our Price staging location. The United Mine Workers of America are hosting our staging location out there. So we're really excited to have all of the support. I don't know if I've seen a time, at least in recent memory, that I can remember that that there's just so much solidarity in this movement. So I'm really looking forward to that. We do have to work on getting about 200,000 signatures so that we have enough padding to withstand any signatures that don't count, or the chance that opposition is going to try to get signatures removed. So just putting that out there. If anybody has any questions when the question portion comes, definitely let me know.
Thank you, Bonnie. I know most lobbyists look forward to the end of the legislative session to be able to rest, and you are having to continue your work day in and day out with this referendum effort. So thank you for all you're doing.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to mid-April, because then I can finally take a nap. So
Oh, well, good luck, and we hope that we can support you in any way we can. So HB 267, unfortunately, was signed by the governor pretty soon after it was passed. For the rest of the panel, for any of this bad legislation that you talked about, are there any hopes for a veto from the governor? Marina or Nat?
I'm happy to jump in. Oh, sorry, Marina.
Mine can be quick. I'll just say, I don't think so. Obviously HB 269 has already been signed as well. That's the dorm bill. HB 77, we had hoped maybe, but the sort of chatter that I'm hearing is he's probably likely to sign it. So. Go ahead, Nat, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So the Let Utah Vote Coalition, which we're a member of as along with Alliance for a Better Utah, and many other organizations put together a rally and press conference following the legislative session to call on the governor to veto a number of bills that were passed this session related to attacks on our democracy. And we wanted to make that strong call. We have heard specific to HB 300 that he is likely to sign it, and that's fairly disappointing to us. But there could be a chance for some others. I think for example, SB 296. It may not be a power that he's interested in receiving, and that was a bill that did not receive 2/3 majority in both the Senate and the House. And so there is, some hope that if he were to veto, that they wouldn't be able to accomplish an override session. But frankly, where that's being optimistic, I think we hope he makes that choice, but I don't think we're banking on it. So
We can always hope. And if anybody on the call would like to email Governor Cox to ask him to veto a specific bill, I'm putting in the chat right now a link where you can submit a comment. So please go there, let him know what your thoughts are and if he should veto any bills. So now that the session is over, I am not pleased to let you know that there are only 308 days until the next legislative session. What's the best way for people on this call to engage with state lawmakers over the interim session? And we will start with Nat.
Thanks, Chase. Yeah, there's a lot of great ways to stay engaged. Many of your legislators will be holding their own events, their own town halls in the next couple of months. And if you're on a newsletter of theirs or if you're following them on social media, that's a great place, kind of a low stakes to go hear them speak, maybe introduce yourself, see what they're all about. And if there's someone, you really agree with and get along with, maybe an opportunity to get involved in their campaign. But you can also invite them to your events if you're someone who, likes to, have like a neighborhood party, or, you've got, a bunch of friends who all live in their district. That's always an opportunity where you can, just send them an email and include a bill or a vote that you were appreciative of, that you really thought that they did a great job on. And then if there was a bill or a vote that, you think that they should have gone a different way, introduce maybe your perspective, open up a conversation. I think those are all some ways to get involved now that they have a little more time. So
Piper?
Yeah, Nat did a fabulous job covering a lot of the main ways to get engaged. But yeah, I think it's always really evident to me once I'm up there for the session how important the interim is for building relationships. And you don't need any fancy reason to reach out to your representative too. I think as a constituent, a lot of us can feel intimidated that I may not have the expertise or, to be able to reach out, but relationships go such a long way. So simply saying, I'm interested in the work that you're doing. I'd love to have the opportunity to meet with you. This is a great time to do that kind of outreach. I think that, as Nat mentioned, finding something good that your representative has been working on and sending them a thank you note to make that initial introduction, and maybe then as a way to open the door to giving some constructive feedback as well. I think that can be a great strategy. And I always think it's worth highlighting too, a lot of the legislators' best ideas come from constituents for legislation. So, and I think they love to tell the story of, I had a constituent reach out to me about this issue in my district. So if they're, whether it falls into the areas that we've been talking about or not, if there's an issue you care about, propose for them to work on a bill. That can be a really great way to get engaged.
Bonnie, I know a lot of your immediate plans for your interim involve the referendum. Is there anything that you would add that people can do to be engaged over the coming year?
Um, I mean, aside from everything that has been said is something that I would have said as well. I just think with what I'm working on specifically, the referendum piece, if we make that, then there will be a campaign piece. So there will be opportunities that is going to support whether it's a special election or whether they put it on the general election ballot in 2026. There are ways to make sure that you are engaging with your lawmaker about how this might affect their role, their campaigns.
Marina?
Well, I just want to echo everything everybody has said already. These are excellent suggestions for how to engage in the interim. So as not to sort of duplicate what's already been said, I will just add on that I think the one takeaway for me, increasingly every legislative session, is how we need better legislators. And so I would just encourage everybody to be focusing on ways that we can find better candidates to elect to support these campaigns so that the people that we're working with up there are just giving us a better shot at producing better legislation. And, not to be doom and gloom about everything, I will say that this incoming class of freshmen this year in the House in particular were a real mixed bag. I mean, we had some characters who were really challenging, like Representative Nicolene Peck, but we also had some really moderate Rs who I think were certainly an improvement from the class before them. And, some of the bills that Nat highlighted, for example, dealing with voting rights, we really have a lot of our moderate Republicans to thank for going in and saving and making the amendments that really preserve election day registration, for example, and some of the other important parts. And so I guess that would just be my plug, is we've got to support moderate candidates. To me, the best antidote to the far right and the extreme actions that we're seeing is a strong center. They may not agree with us on every issue, but I think we will see more legislation that is better for all Utahns, more representative of the people who live in this state.
Great, thank you all. And before we go to Q&A, and just let everyone know, if you have a question that you would like for our Q&A portion, you can type it in the Q&A box. That's where we'll be looking and answering questions. But before we get to that, one last question. So if somebody here is interested in the work that you all have been doing over the legislative session and want to be involved moving forward, what's one way that someone can get involved with your organization? Let's start with Marina.
Well, I would just say follow our website to find out more information. What we try to do is at least highlight for the community the bills that are impacting the LGBTQ community and let people know when actions are happening so that they can be involved themselves. And so I think that our link was listed in the chat. Please follow us along. Both for legislative actions and actions that are taking place outside of the legislative session. We would love to have people become involved with our organization.
Great. Bonnie?
I'm going to say what's on, very quickly, what's not long-term, but I'll say what's quickly. Go to protectutahworkers.com, grab packets, get your family and friends to sign. This is a very quick referendum process, but every single signature is going to count. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to be involved in this process and to make sure that you're giving the voice back to the people. Long term, there's also an ability to donate on our protectutahworkers.com. We're definitely going to need all of that kind of support as well. So that's another way to support this effort. But generally, how to support the Utah Education Association. We do have a UEA PAC that could use donations. Absolutely. That's another one that you can do. Just go to UEA or myuea.com and you can go to under the dome, and that gets you to our PAC site. And that's also where we do our political action through our PAC. And so that's going to be really important as we move forward, and collaborating with my gosh, why can't I think about? My brain is so fried right now. But recruitment efforts for candidates as we move forward. We want to make sure we're working with a bunch of different partners on making sure that we can get the best people in there. So that's going to be a really big long-term piece. But right now, we really need to focus on this short-term piece on this referendum. So protectutahworkers.com, get involved however you can. And if you need any more questions answered that we don't answer today, there's a contact us on our website. So please send those questions through.
Great. And Piper and Nat?
One piece that I'm really excited about, after working on HB 525, the clean truck amendments, our research really showed that vehicle emissions is a major issue in our state. And for us, we saw that there's a huge potential for building a bigger coalition behind this bill specifically. So I think Nat shared information on how, Stewardship Utah's website and how to get involved. We would love to bring more people into the tent, kind of organizing around that bill, particularly those who live adjacent to interstates or along major roadways. We have a lot of schools and healthcare facilities and public spaces near our roads, and we want to build a coalition in the interim specifically behind this bill next session. So stay tuned.
Yeah, absolutely. Just echo what Piper said. Our website where you can get on our newsletter. You can also find our social media there. And it would just be great to have folks following along as, we tackle all of these issues: air quality, democracy, water, the Great Salt Lake, energy. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all. And I would encourage everyone on the call to get involved with these great organizations and the work they're doing. Thank you so much. So we're going to go to Q&A for the audience. And there's a lot here already. I'm going to start with the first one. I know we focus a lot on bad bills and the divisive bills. Does anyone have any examples of bipartisan bills that had a lot of support from this session?
I'll let somebody else answer that question more broadly, but I just want to flag for everybody on the call that the vast majority of bills that are heard in the Utah legislature are unanimous or close to unanimous. It just tends to be these more contentious bills that make the headlines where you see a real split. But there are a lot of bills, actually, that get passed every year with Democratic and Republican support. But I'll let somebody else who maybe followed this highlight some specific policy areas.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a couple of bills that we were following this session that had, bipartisan support that passed, and they were decent bills. One was House Bill 100, which was the school lunch bill for students. That was really great, made some really great strides towards progress in that space, and that's definitely a bipartisan space. And then the other one, which is Senate Bill 20, and this had broad support among not just UEA or anything like that, but that a while ago when they changed the retirement for Utah State people who participate in the state retirement plan, they changed it to a two-tier system where it was kind of not level playing field with people who'd been in the system for a longer amount of time. And so they changed the bill so that employers can opt in to pay more above whatever the cap is, towards retirement. So employers can choose to pay above and beyond the cap that existed when they created this two-tier retirement system. So those went through, and those are good. And those were all very bipartisan.
Great. Thank you both. Bonnie, I'm going to go back to you to answer another couple questions asking about where to get signature packets. You're on mute.
Should just leave it unmuted. When you go to protectutahworkers.com, if you go to get involved, that takes you to a calendar of where you can pick up packets, where you can sign packets, and that will be built out this week to include folks who are having pop-up events. So that when they're having their, their signing event at a park or at a store, that will be updated to reflect those opportunities as well. So if you just go to protectutahworkers.com, get to the Get Involved section, you can find opportunities to pick up packets, sign packets, and go forward that way.
Thank you. Nat, this one may be for you. I'm not sure if you were following this bill. But there was a bill during the session to extend ranked choice voting in some way in the future. That's something that's expiring, I believe, after this municipal election this year. Do you know what happened to that bill?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. That was a bill sponsored by Senator Weiler. For some reason, I'm thinking it's SB 127, but please don't quote me on that. I could be wrong about that number. So this bill did get a committee hearing, and there were a lot of people who turned out in support of the bill and some people who turned out against the bill. Ultimately, the bill was held in committee, and I think, many of the senators on the committee sort of asked vaguely to see more data, and I'm hoping that that's something that the sponsor as well as other advocates can put together. There still is 2026, an opportunity to get the program put back into place. Of course, it'll be, expired by the session, but to put it back into place so that by the 2027 municipals that there's still that opportunity, because there's so many municipalities who really love this chance, this opportunity to use ranked choice voting. It helps them save money in their elections and other things, just to provide that choice for municipalities. So yeah, that's where the bill is, and I think there is some hope that it'll come back next session.
Great, thank you. Opening up to everybody. So whoever would like to answer this, is there a better, more effective way to contact our representatives and senators? Do phone calls work better than emails, for example?
I'll take a short crack at this. I think it can really just depend on the legislator and also what time of year it is. You'll have some legislators who are like, I just prefer a quick text, or for if you're trying to during the session persuade your legislator to vote yes or no on an issue, you may send an email and never get a response, but they have an intern who's, filing that email into an inbox to sort of keep a tally of who's who's encouraged them to vote yes or no. So I'll say that if you never received a response, don't let that discourage you. They may just not have had a chance to respond, but you still may have impacted their vote. And two, if you just do that relationship building, you may find that there is a preferred method of communication for your specific representative.
Anyone else have any advice on that? Contacting your representative? Okay. So I know this is a nonpartisan C3 call that we're hosting. But I wanted to see if anyone has any reaction to a senator leaving the Republican Party to join the Forward Party at the close of the session.
That may give some people a clue as to just how hard this session was. I don't know. I think if you have followed that specific senator's comments on the floor, you'll know that he at least felt extremely frustrated with how some issues and votes turned out this session. So.
And, I just would add on to that. I think Senator Thatcher really gave voice to this growing concern about the legislature not listening or being responsive to the people that they represent. And so I think that action he took allowed him to sort of amplify that message. And so for that, I'm really appreciative. And I would just say, to Nat's point, Senator Thatcher has really sort of grown into his voice in the time that I've seen him up at the legislature from when he came in initially. And there were a number of bills where I felt like he was so eloquent on the floor and really articulated sort of his positions in a really meaningful and important way. And so, yeah, I think he's been freed in a lot of ways from feeling like he has to toe the party line, and has been able to, express himself, and it doesn't necessarily change the outcome always. But I guess I'm hopeful, seeing that move on the part of Senator Thatcher, that there may be more space for others to move into that middle sort of alternative space. And, perhaps that leads to some interesting stuff like we've seen in other states like Alaska, where you have sort of multi-party coalitions that are able to achieve better outcomes that I think are more representative for people in those states.
Great, thank you both. I am personally not familiar with this organization that was mentioned in this question, but is anybody familiar with the Cicero Institute? And no? Okay, I'm sorry, Ashley. We are not familiar with the Cicero Institute and whether they had an impact this session. Let's see. Nat, probably back to you, but was there any talk or traction with implementing approval voting this session?
Not that I really heard of. I know that there has been a conversation about, with the municipal alternative voting pilot project, having more options than just ranked choice voting available to municipalities to choose from. I'm not sure. It might require a bill in order to get that listed as an option, or it may already be an option. It's just a matter of getting municipalities interested in trying it out. But I didn't see a bill this session that would have specifically allowed for approval voting. And I think before we can even get there, we need to get that pilot project back, and up and running, so that, many options can be considered. So.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. What is the main lesson you learned this session? Probably gonna have to be quick answers, but anybody who would like to take that? Anybody?
I can give a little answer here. I am just so in awe of how much public turnout there was this session for against HB 267, against HB 300. With HB 300, we heard legislators saying that they'd had thousands of people contact them, and we really need everyone in on this fight and on this work, and your public input really does make a difference. And so thank you for everyone who did take a minute to send an email to their legislators this year, and I hope you stick with us and as we continue this work.
Thank you. Anyone else have a main takeaway or lesson learned from the session? Bonnie? Were you about to? No, okay. Piper?
Yeah, I think relationships just really in our work and getting some air quality bills passed or a lot further than we expected. There were committees where, had we not had a friendly relationship with one or two legislators that you would not anticipate, we would have any kind of alliance with, those relationships ended up saving our bills at multiple points in the process. And I think if you can keep that open mind and that, that good, intent and friendliness, it's amazing where it can come in handy. So we're kind of excited to continue to cultivate relationships in the interim.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to everyone who attended the panel. We're grateful to have you join us today for this discussion. Thank you, Nat, Piper, Marina, Bonnie, for joining us. We're so grateful for all the work that you individually have done, and also your organizations. And that's the end of the panel. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all have a great day, and we will see you soon. Bye.